A claim leaves a pharmacy computer and vanishes into a switch. In less than a second, an answer comes back. Approved. Denied. Copay $12. Copay $140. The patient nods or argues or walks out empty-handed. Nobody in the aisle sees the other numbers that moved. There is a list price the manufacturer publishes. There is a reimbursement the pharmacy will actually collect. There is a net price that appears only after a rebate travels later, off the counter, through a contract the patient never reads. The bag looks simple. The payment is not. Health plans hire pharmacy benefit managers to police that complexity. The official job is cost control. Build a benefit, negotiate, steer volume, keep the drug spend from exploding. That is the sentence in the procurement file. Then the market concentrates. The Federal Trade Commission's interim staff report states that the 6 largest United States pharmacy benefit managers handled more than 90% of prescriptions in 2023. Staff analysis, not a courtroom verdict. Qualified language about incentives and potential effects. It does not mean every PBM contract raises every patient's price.
It does mean the referee became the field. The core contradiction is blunt. Intermediaries hired to control prescription costs can also profit from opaque rebates, from spread pricing, and from pharmacies they own or control. The same desk that promises savings can earn from the shadows between prices. It is a business model sitting in a payment chain. Drug makers on one side, insurers on another, pharmacies on a third, patients at the window. The PBM in the middle, paid to make the middle cheaper, positioned to make the middle valuable. Why would a health plan hire that? Because the alternative is drowning in claims. Because manufacturers will not give their deepest concessions to a small buyer. Because someone has to say yes or no to a $10,000 therapy before the card is swiped. The hire is rational. The opacity is the wound. Watch the money, not the slogan.
Most people still imagine a short line from factory to counter. Drug company, pharmacy, patient. An insurer hovering in the background, paying a share. That picture is a generation out of date. It is an occupation that grew because the benefit itself grew. In the 1960s and 1970s, a handful of companies processed drug claims and mailed maintenance medicines every month. The work looked clerical. By the 1980s and early 1990s, employers watching outpatient drug spend climb began to carve the pharmacy benefit out of the medical plan. They needed a vendor that could build a national network, adjudicate a claim at the register, and talk to manufacturers as a buyer rather than as a scatter of local accounts. The vendor acquired a name that sounded like furniture: Pharmacy Benefit Manager. Mail-order warehouses in the 1990s made the administrator visible as a place, not only as software. Specialty medicines later made that place expensive to bypass. Drivers left before dawn with totes of 90-day fills stacked as inventory, not as counter-advice. The Government Accountability Office, studying how selected states regulate that vendor, writes the job without romance.
PBMs administer prescription benefits. They negotiate rebates. They influence drug pricing. They reimburse pharmacies under arrangements that can include spread pricing. Those sentences are not accusations. They are a map of functions. Cost control in this map means aggregation. One contract in place of 10,000. One formulary instead of a pile of local customs. One network logo on a plastic card that works in another time zone. A benefits director in a manufacturing firm cannot run that map from a side office. A city government cannot staff a rebate desk that manufacturers will treat as serious. After Congress created Medicare Part D in 2003, and after the benefit opened in 2006, the federal program itself relied on private drug plans that, in turn, relied on the same kind of administrator. Volume became the language manufacturers understood. Volume became the reason the hire looked inevitable. What most people missed, standing at the counter, was that savings is an accounting word with more than one home. A plan can report rebate dollars as a reduction in net drug cost. A pharmacy can report that the same claim paid less than the bottle cost to acquire.
A patient can pay a copay that is larger than the plan's net. Each ledger can be internally consistent. The dollars do not have to meet in one room. States saw fragments of this first. Some licensed the companies. Some demanded that spreads be disclosed or banned. Some attacked gag clauses that had stopped pharmacists from saying a cash price might beat the copay. The GAO report is not a nationwide ranking and does not pretend to be. It is evidence that lawmakers already treated the administrator as a market actor, not a silent processor. The patchwork proved the industry too large to ignore. The blind spot has a second layer. Once enough plants outsource the list of preferred drugs and the list of preferred pharmacies, manufacturers negotiate with the outsourcer. Pharmacies sign the outsourcer's terms. Patients meet the outsourcer as a prior authorization, a tier, a pharmacy that is suddenly out of network. The health plan still cuts the large check. The administrator drafts the rules attached to the check. Vertical combination arrives later as a corporate sequel. Insurers buy or build the administrator. The administrator grows mail order and specialty pharmacies.
A single family of companies can design the benefit, price the claim, and fill the bottle. The GAO does not have to infer a motive for the structure to be visible. The Federal Trade Commission, already on the record about volume, would later treat that structure as a conflict. Two institutions, two temperatures, the same occupation sitting in the same chain. This is how a rational hire becomes a rule of the market. Drug benefits became too large to improvise. The improvisation problem was real. The vendor that solved it became the switch through which the country's prescriptions had to pass. And a switch, once it is the only practical switch, does not remain a clerk. The contradiction does not start with greed. It starts with a workload. Then the workload becomes leverage. Then leverage becomes a price. Inside a pharmacy benefit manager, the interesting person is not a cartoon villain. It is a contracting team with two clocks. One clock is the health plan's RFP. Show savings, show a network, show a rebate guarantee that will look good in a benefits meeting. The other clock is the firm's own yield. Yield can come from a share of rebates. Yield can come from the difference between what a plan is billed and what a pharmacy is paid. Yield can come from an affiliated pharmacy. Those are incentives, not mind reading. No document in this story needs to say what a chief executive held in his heart. The contract is enough. Across the table sits a plan sponsor, an employer, a union trust, a Medicaid managed care company, an insurer that may already own the PBM it is nominally supervising. The sponsor's procurement officer has a career incentive. Do not let drug trend explode on their watch. Consultants arrive with scorecards. The scorecards reward a clean story, guaranteed rebates, a broad network on paper, a single throat to choke. The manufacturer rebate team lives in a different weather. Their drug has a list price and a clinical story. If a competitor can be disadvantaged by a formulary tier, a step edit, or an exclusion, a larger rebate is a rational bid for volume. If the rebate is a percentage of list, a higher list can enlarge the concession counted as a win, even when the net barely moves. The independent pharmacist arrives with a visible wound. A reimbursement arrives below acquisition cost. A preferred network leaves the store one contract revision away from empty parking spaces. A specialty drug is pulled to a mail facility 2 states away. The pharmacist can narrate a single claim as a loss. Their motive is survival. Their constraint is that they do not set the switch. Patients are not a faction with a lobbyist in every room. They are a copay, a deductible, a denial letter, a phone tree. The moment is not metaphorical when the drug is insulin or an antiviral that cannot wait. Someone on the PBM side will call that utilization management. Someone at the kitchen table will call it a closed door. A few decisions reveal the psychology of the whole board. Place a high rebate brand on a better tier than a cheaper net alternative, and you have chosen the metric that pays you. Exclude the nearby pharmacy, and geography loses. Fill the specialty script inside the family of companies, and you have chosen not to lose the margin to a stranger. Ambition here is ordinary. Grow covered lives, win the next RFP, defend the rebate guarantee, keep the affiliated pharmacy full. None of that requires a movie speech. It requires a spreadsheet that treats other people's prices as raw material. The hidden motive, if the word motive is even right, is to remain the unavoidable counterparty. As long as manufacturers, plans, and pharmacies cannot find each other except through this desk,
The desk can charge for introductions that look like management. And then the RFP is issued again. The same 3 or 4 logos arrive. The sponsor feels competitive pressure. The structure does not.
A claim hits the switch at 10:41 in the morning. The engine reads the member, the drug, the pharmacy identifier, the prescriber. It checks a list: preferred, non-preferred, excluded. It checks a set of gates: step therapy, prior authorization, quantity limit. It prices the claim against a pharmacy contract signed in one season and a plan contract signed in another. It returns a copay and a paid amount. The opera lasts less than a second. The money continues for months. Begin with the rebate, because the rebate is the quiet river. A manufacturer needs access to millions of covered lives. The PBM controls the formulary that sits between those lives and the bottle. Placement has a price. The manufacturer offers a concession, conditioned on a preferred tier, on the exclusion of a rival, on a promise of volume. It may move after the claim, not at the register. Some of it is passed to the plan as an offset. Some of it may be retained as an administrative fee or a share, depending on the contract. The patient at the counter does not see the river. If the patient's coinsurance is calculated from a list price, the patient can even pay more, while the net, somewhere else, falls.
Formulary control is the lever that makes the river flow. A tier is not a medical journal. It is a ranking with copays attached. Move a drug from preferred brand to non-preferred, and you have changed the patient's math without touching the molecule. Require a cheaper drug first, and you have invented a queue. Demand prior authorization, and you have added time, staff, and abandonment. Exclude the drug entirely, and you have told the prescriber to start over. Each of those tools can be defended as cost control. Each can also be used as a bargaining chip in a rebate negotiation. Now, the spread. In a spread arrangement, the number sent to the plan and the number sent to the pharmacy are allowed to diverge. The plan may be billed a figure that looks like a market discount. The pharmacy may be paid a lower figure drawn from a different schedule. The difference is not a tip jar on the counter. It is a contractual residue. States in the GAO's selected sample have tried to drag that residue into the light. Other contracts move toward pass-through pricing, in which the plan sees the pharmacy payment and pays the PBM a fee instead. The existence of both models is the point.
The residue was valuable enough to design around. Watch a simplified illustration, labeled as such, not as a filed exhibit. A plan is billed $42 for a generic claim. The pharmacy is paid $29. $13 sits in the middle. Multiply by enough claims, and the middle becomes a business line. The wound is that the two counterparties on either side of the middle cannot easily audit each other. Pharmacy networks extend the same logic into geography. A preferred pharmacy offers a lower copay and receives a different reimbursement. A non-preferred pharmacy is still in-network on a brochure and still expensive enough at the register to steer the member away. Specialty pharmacies, which handle the fragile, high-cost therapies, are often narrower still. If the specialty pharmacy shares a corporate parent with the PBM, the steering is no longer a suggestion. It is a pipe. Vertical integration is where the Federal Trade Commission's interim staff work puts its weight. Staff describe concentration. Staff describe integration into insurers and pharmacies. Staff describe formulary influence and effects on pharmacies. The language stays qualified. Incentives.
Potential effects. An interim staff report is not a final commission vote on every contract in America. Hold that qualification, or the story becomes a pamphlet. Hold the other document beside it. The GAO still records a cost control occupation that states are trying to regulate rather than abolish. The two reports do not cancel. They describe the same animal from opposite ends. One end is the reason for the hire. The other end is what the hire can become when a handful of firms handle the country's prescriptions and also own the shelves. Dominoes fall without a single villain speech. Manufacturers bidding in rebate percentages can find reason to protect a high list. Plans that share in rebates can find reason to tolerate that list. Patients with coinsurance can find the list waiting in their deductible. Pharmacies paid on a squeezed schedule close hours, close locations, or sell to a chain. Chains that are aligned with a PBM gain the scripts that closed.
Employers see a savings report and a still rising trend line and hire another consultant. In 2024, the FTC puts an interim staff report into public view. Inside the industry, it is another weather system.
Lawsuits proceed in their own calendars. State houses draft another disclosure bill. Trade associations issue statements about savings and choice. None of these rituals prices a claim at 1041. The decisive tension is not idealism versus cartoon greed. It is a real function versus a real conflict. Utilization management can stop a wasteful therapy. It can also delay a necessary one. A rebate can lower a plan's net. It can also reward the wrong sticker. Every defense is sometimes true. Every indictment is sometimes true. The contract selects which truth gets paid. Barriers break slowly. A state bans a spread, and the residue moves into a fee, a chargeback, a specialty channel. A plan demands pass-through and loses a rebate guarantee that made the finance committee calm. Transparency, when it arrives as a PDF the public cannot parse. The switch still switches. And then a patient is told the cheaper tablet is not covered. The pharmacist shrugs toward a phone number. The number plays music. The claim, somewhere, is already complete. No one on the line can see the rebate or the spread. The cheaper tablet stays excluded. There is a kind of price that is not a number so much as a corridor. You enter with a prescription, you exit with a bag. Between the two doors, several counterparties take a reading and leave a residue. The corridor is legal. The corridor is useful. The corridor has no windows. The corridor is also the reason a country can argue for a decade about whether drugs are expensive and still not be talking about the same invoice. Economics, in the register this channel cares about, is not a morality play about middlemen. It is the study of what a contract rewards when nobody else can see the terms. Reward a share of list, and list becomes a resource. Reward a gap between two counterparties, and the gap is inventory like a warehouse. Reward the fill inside the family, and the family learns to write the map that leads home. None of that requires a conspiracy briefing. It requires a payment rule that survives contact with ordinary ambition. The rule is the character. The larger principle is colder. When an industry hires an administrator to master complexity, it also hands the administrator the right to define what complexity costs. Over time, the definition becomes the product.
Plans buy the definition. Manufacturers bid into the definition. Pharmacies either accept the definition or leave the network. Patients meet the definition as a copay that feels arbitrary because, from where they stand, it is. Complexity was the original excuse. It became the inventory. A market can still be rational in that light. Deep discounts really do travel toward volume. Networks really do stop a plan from negotiating aisle by aisle. Utilization rules really do block some waste. The rationality is local. It lives inside each contract. It does not automatically add up to a rational price for the person holding the white bag. Local rationality can still write a cruel bill. That is the aftertaste. Not a scandal with a single defendant. A stack of locally rational deals that produce a nationally confusing bill. Two public documents sit on the stack like bookends. One, from auditors of state regulation, describes a cost control craft. The other, from competition staff, describes a concentrated craft with conflicts braided through it. Believe both, or you will flatten a three-dimensional trade into a poster. Bookends do not close a trade.
Imagine, as a hypothetical, a future committee that publishes every rebate, every spread, every affiliated fill in a form a patient could actually read. Do not invent the crowd that cheers. Do not invent the price that falls. Just notice what would vanish. The corridor's privilege to be unread. Then notice what would remain. Someone would still have to say yes or no to a therapy before the card is swiped. The hire would still be rational. The unread space would be smaller. Night settles on a parking lot outside a pharmacy that is still open because the light is on. The lot is almost empty. A fluorescent tube hums over painkillers and toothpaste. A clerk bags a bottle. A switch somewhere in a data center has already finished its work. The receipt prints one number.
the chain keeps the rest. Leave the parking lot with that math. If a cost controller can be paid from the shadows between other people's prices, whose price is the system actually optimizing?